Hi, I'm Joshua Kemble, and this is my Vloggins. This is kind of an unusual one. I'm actually doing this on my way home from work. And this is the vlog where I talk about illustration, graphic design, and cartooning. I'm a full-time art director. That's where I'm heading home from. And when I'm not doing full-time art directing or being a father or a husband, then I'm working on cartooning and comics. So today I am going to talk a little bit about breaks, and that's mainly because this weekend, like, we had finally gotten our flooring replaced at my house, and I was trying, like, toward the end of the week to consistently, like, work on my comic, and was realizing I was, like, super close to burnout. So for those of you who may not be aware, I have a comic called 2 Stories Book 1 that is out through Marcosia Enterprises. If you look for 2 Stories and Joshua Kemble, you can find that book and order it on Amazon for, like, a really reasonable price. And you can also request that your local comic book shop stock it and buy it through them as well, because local businesses and comic stores are like the lifeblood of our industry anyway. But if you're really tight on cash and you want a really good deal on a comic, get it through Amazon. Anyhow, so I'm working on book 2 of 2 Stories, and it's just an immense amount of pages to have to pencil and ink, and I really wanted to maintain my output. And for those of you who don't know, we were also having our flooring replaced, and my wife's back was out, and so she was kind of bedridden for like a week. And so I was handling the duties of my wife, trying to do cartooning, trying to do art direction, and just kind of juggling a million plates. And I was finding that I was just really close to burnout. Mentally wasn't in the best space, physically wasn't in the best space. And so what I decided to do this weekend was intentionally not work on my comic. Instead, what I did was, when we got back to the house, since we had all the furniture out of the rooms, I decided to deep clean, because my wife's been not feeling well for a week, and I just thought it would be nice for her to have a living room that's, like, awesome and super clean. And I decided very intentionally to put my wife and my family before comics, and I decided I'm just going to shelve working on comics until today. And I think that was probably one of the best decisions I could make. So I always talk on this channel about productivity, about trying to work on your comics no matter what, and trying to find windows of time to write and to work on your own products and projects. In general, I stick to that, but I do think there are times where certain things take, like, major priority over art, over your job, over all sorts of other stuff in creative life. And I think one of those main things is, like, the relationships you have. So, like, close friendships, wives, husbands, and definitely sometimes just, like, basic household duties. These things, like, should never be, like, a full distraction or an excuse. And that's where I usually draw the line for myself. By the way, the sun behind me is just gorgeous. Hopefully it's not refracting too much and blocking the view for you of this video, but hopefully you'll get, like, a really pretty desert sunset in the background. But anyhow, yeah, so, like, these things, like in this case, it was a hard decision for me to stop working on my comic. And I think that's a good indicator of when it might actually be a good time to stop working, is if you find that your creative projects are kind of like starting to interfere with your personal life, and not in a typical kind of like resistance kind of way, but if like an emergency comes up or someone in your life that's really close to you really needs you, I do think, especially as a Christian, I think you need to, like, being a Christian myself, I think there's a moral imperative to prioritize, you know, your significant other or your kid, or sometimes your career might come before your personal projects. And it's a fine line, because you can also find yourself in a scenario where that becomes an excuse or a distraction, because life is very busy and full of a lot of distractions and a lot of things. And honestly, time is finite, and we don't get a ton of time to work on our comics. I have, in the last decade, managed to put out 2 graphic novels, one of which has not been published yet, but will probably be seeing the light of day shortly, and then the other that is 2 stories, book 1, and that's taken about 10 years, with me like plugging away at pages almost daily. So if it's gonna take like 10 years to do 2 books, I want to shorten that time, where it's like not going to take me 5 years to put out a book, a graphic novel. It's just, you know, at that rate, it's just going to take too long to kind of be able to see a lot of the visions that I have come to light as an artist. And so I wanted to bring that up, because I know people who don't even have that output. Like, and I'm a very slow artist. I'm a slow graphic novelist. And, you know, some people might be putting out like a floppy in 5 years, you know. And I don't judge that, but my point is, like, if you have goals, like I have this goal to get these books done, it is important to prioritize and to sometimes like actually say, like, today I have to make my time to work on my personal projects. I need to set aside and sacrifice like certain things. But I do think there are also, like, it's like a pendulum, where it's like you can, or not a pendulum, that's a bad example. It's more like a weight, like a countered weight, where basically, like, you know, a scaled weight. Sorry, that's the right term. Where it's like you can kind of put too much on the side that is of like, you know, putting your art and your personal projects first, and if you put too many stones in that, you know, you've got personal relationships and life and love and like these really important things that make life worthwhile that kind of get tipped out of skew. And but if you put too many rocks or stones on the other side, you know, you basically are never going to have time to work on your comics. And so I think, like, it's important to try to balance. And also, at the end of the day, like, balancing is never going to be something you master. I don't think anyone's ever figured out how to fully balance this stuff. But I did think it was important to make a really short video, being a person who's always harping on, like, you know, you got to work at it, you got to make time. You know, I'm a big fan of the 100 Days of Making Comics. You do 30 minutes a day minimum to get your work done. But there are times where that's just not going to make a ton of sense. And for those times, like, you know, sometimes it's okay. If you're finding, like I was, like, earlier in the week, where you're, like, just completely mentally exhausted, and you're gonna fail somewhere, you know, and you have to choose between, I'm gonna fail at my personal project, or I'm gonna fail with my wife and my kid. I'm gonna pick my wife and kid. And this stems back to something I was talking about, I've talked about a long time ago, about kind of making a list of priorities. And that list is in flux sometimes, but I definitely have a list of priorities that's pretty clear in my life, and one of them is to me, God comes first, because I'm a Christian and I believe in God, and so if there's obligations with God, I need to follow those obligations. Then it's my wife, and then it's my kids, or kid. I don't have kids, but just a single kid. And then it's family, immediate family after that. And then it's art, personal projects, and work. Those kind of vary. Because work, what I do for a career as an art director, supports those first few in the latter. And so for me, it was a hard decision to not work on comics. I know that's weird to say. That might sound like an excuse, but it's I do enjoy having daily output and putting work into my art on a daily basis. But I also find that sometimes it's really good to me, that hard decision I feel was the right decision, because if I had selfishly just continued working on comics on top of what was going on in the last few days, I think I probably would have been useless to anyone, because I just wouldn't have had the energy. And if I hadn't, in order to I was at a point where something had to give, and if the thing that had to give was my wife or my kid, that just doesn't align with my my morals, it doesn't align with my moral code at all. And another thing that kind of helped me was my friend Alan Noble wrote a really good book called You Are Not Your Own, and I've been listening to it on audiobook. I have the physical book too, but because I commute for so long, I don't often have the time to read physical books, and that bums me out, because I really enjoy reading physical books. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I was really excited that his book came out. He had worked on it for 3 years, and it's just an incredible book, and he's an incredible writer. It is a totally to be transparent, it's a very Christian book, written by a Christian writer, but it's really interesting because it's not those 10 steps to save your marriage kind of books. It literally is a book that makes the case about how a world that is centered on you defining your own identity, you yourself alone, inevitably fails, because that's actually not the world we live in. And so it kind of makes the argument of the Dylan song, which is interesting because it connects a lot with a lot of the themes that I'm writing for Two Stories Book 2, which are about this sort of idea that regardless in life, you're always going to be in service to someone. And so, whether that's a wealthier person, if you're the wealthiest person, then it's going to be the least wealthy people that you're in service to, because you're worried about keeping your wealth, so on. So that's kind of the angle I took, but Alan took a really unique angle. I guess it's not super unique, but it's the way that he writes is really fascinating, because he basically breaks down all of the implications that come from society, starting with the premise that we are self-authored, self-defining, self-created beings, and all of the pervasive effects on society, how that then translates to us having all of these proposed solutions, all still built on the premise of us being our own, and having this individuality, and that our personhood and our personality and our meaning derives from ourselves, using that as like a building block, how society then has to come up with solutions to inevitable problems that arise from that false premise. And then, like, you know, it gets into, like, you know, how we start creating prescriptions to try to cure those problems, and they end up creating new problems. And what I love about the book is it's not a prescriptive book, it's a descriptive book with a simple prescription, which is to follow Christ and accept that that we belong to Christ. And now anybody who's like not a Christian at that point probably tuned out. I don't know. But I do like talking openly about my faith. It's part of my book as well. And I would actually encourage people who are not Christians to read Alan's work. Particularly this book, it's a good entry point, but it's definitely not written to like, it's not like an objective like take. It's a very subjective, very belief-driven, belief in the idea of Jesus as God kind of book. But it's such a really inspiring book because it's not prescriptive. Like, I feel like there's a lot of books written in that area where it'll be like the 5 steps to feeling happy, or the solutions to depression, or the solutions, if everybody in the world just went to church, everything would be healed, kind of scenarios. And what I love about this book is it doesn't make any of those arguments. It's just like, hey, here's what the world looks like, and then here's our hope going through a world that looks like this. Like, we can't necessarily find a possible solution to it so much as just find hope and almost like endurance based on Christ alone, because the world is like this. And it's a really good book. I highly recommend it. And, you know, especially if you're a believer, I highly recommend that book. Like, Alan, I've known that guy since we were in bands together playing rock and roll, and I cannot speak well enough of like how excellent it is, and also how encouraging it was this week. That actually helped me prioritize, like, not just putting productivity above humanity. And so, like, for me, that helped me make the decision to not work on comics that weekend too, because it helped me realize, like, God has me in this scenario, and right now I need to choose love and humanity over productivity. And I actually think that's a really good, profound book, and I'm probably going to reread it, listen to the audiobook. I might read the hard copy quite a few more times because I got a ton out of it. So Alan Noble, You Are Not Your Own. And then also, that's the end of my vlog. So I'm Joshua Kemble. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the like, hit the bell. Feel free to comment. Especially, I really would love it if any of you guys out there actually read the book that I'm recommending. Just let me know in the comments section. And also, if you've read the book, the fact that I had to ask for like a subscribe, and hitting the bell is kind of funny, because that's something that the book itself pokes fun at. So anyhow, that'll do it. I'm about to head home. I will say, on a stream update or a channel update, I think all I have left is verifying my address, and then I'm monetized, which is really cool. So thank you to everybody out there who's watched these videos, who's liked and subscribed and commented and like in the community, because it's actually enabling me to potentially make a few cents off of every video, which is really cool. I will also say I got a new live streaming camera, so as well as having like a nice new stable holder for my vlogs that I do on my commute, I also should be able to get back to live streaming and hopefully have like better lighting and better quality of those. So that's something to look forward to. And I'm hoping that tonight I'll have the energy to get back to cartooning once my son, I've done book time with him and all that. I want to sit down and really work on 2 Stories Book 2, because it's going to be a good book, and I'm really excited about it. That being said, if you want to read the first book about faith and mental illness, 2 Stories Book 1, you can get it on Amazon at a reduced rate, and actually you can also ask your local comic shop to order it. And that'll do it. I hope you guys are having a lovely day. I feel much more rested. I don't know if you noticed in the last few vlogs that those were all done before I decided to kind of chill on cartooning for a bit. You can probably see me gradually get more and more exhausted. And hopefully this video shows the fact that I feel so much more rested. I don't feel perfect. Nothing's perfect right now, and things are still chaotic and busy. But there is a value to like kind of remembering your humanity, resting, having mercy and care for the people around you, and trying to show love. So that's my corniness, and I will see you guys on the next Vloggins or the next live stream. And hopefully I'll be able to validate my address shortly as well for that. All right, see you guys. Bye.